pacing turning on. So for those who don't know what pacing is, when we're saying pacing, in this context, pacing is telling the AI director to start sending hordes at you and to start sending specials at you. And you'll notice that, and maybe you've noticed just playing the game, that if you start a map and you kind of just stand around at the start, you're not going to get any hordes or specials in some maps. Not all maps, but in some maps. And that's because the director has not been told to turn pacing on yet. That usually happens when you pass a certain threshold of map progression. It's going to be very early on in a map. I think it's going to be easier for me if I show this in, I think, like Screaming Bell, because it's like a very, or Against the Grain. It's like a very obvious. Let's just do Bell. Everybody loves Bell. What just happened?
Everyone's most beloved map. You play any map for 24/7 trying to get past a certain trigger and then you just try Bell to feel good about yourself again.
Yep.
Everyone knows the feeling.
Why is it loading Tollsharm Keep? Did I break it?
I'm not sure.
More technical difficulties. What the heck just happened? Oh, I did a quick play in modded. That's what happened. I'm trying to go too fast here. Here we go. Custom game, private game, host game. There we go. I'm not used to being able to run into people in modded.
That's a rare occasion.
Okay. So, discussion of pacing. Pacing, the AI director is told, okay, start sending hordes at people, start sending specials at people. And especially in Screaming Bell, you know that you can run around this whole area. You're never going to have a horde sent at you. You're never going to have specials sent at you. That's because pacing was not turned on. Pacing in Screaming Bell will not turn on until you make this drop down here. Or it can also turn on if you drop onto this cart in a specific spot. So like here, pacing is not on, but if I like walk over here, pacing will turn on. That's because there's jumps in map progression. If I walk over there, you'll see pacing has started and my map progression is, the game thinks I'm down there. And so that's where, again, knowing where these jumps in map progression can be very important. Why would you not want to turn pacing on and just start the map? Because you can actually gain some advantage from it. Bell is a good example. We know that we're not going to get hordes and we're not going to get specials until we drop down. So what we can do is any enemies that spawn over here and any enemies that spawn down here, and even sometimes enemies that spawn over there, you can attack them with your ranged weapons, pull their aggro, they run up here to try and fight you, you kill them safely. There's no horde timer going, there's no special timer going, you're just clearing out these ambients basically for free. And what does that do for you? That means when you do turn on pacing, you fight your horde and you want to then move forward in the map, those ambients are no longer there blocking your path as you move forward. You don't have to stop and fight them. It's not a danger to you. It's basically free space gained and time gained through the map because it was free, because there were no hordes spawning and no specials spawning. You grabbed their aggro and you killed them before the map even started, basically. And so that's why knowing where pacing starts can be important as well for different maps. Against the Grain is very similar to Screaming Bell. Against the Grain, before you jump over that wooden fence, pacing is off. So you can stand at the wooden fence, clear out any enemies that have loaded in, attack them in the field, they come to you, you clear them out. And so that means when you do jump into the field and against the grain, it's much more clear and you'll be able to progress through it a lot easier while the game is now sending hordes and specials at you. So that was a good idea to talk about pacing because that, again, it's based on your map progression, and it can be very beneficial to take advantage of certain maps when pacing has not turned on yet.
Pestilence.
Yes.
On a related topic, do you want to also
Mhm.
talk a little bit about stopping pacing and why it's good and when to do
Yeah.
it?
So let me change maps again. I know a very
Maybe
good
Righteous.
example of that. Yeah, Righteous Stand. So in a lot of maps, pacing does not persist through the entire map. A lot of the time, maps that have these events partway through, you'll notice when you do our example here, Righteous Stand, when you're in the middle event for Righteous Stand, you don't get hordes during that event. You'll still get specials, but you're not getting any hordes. So why is that? That's because at some point when you cross a certain threshold, oh, I could have just come here and talked about pacing at the start there. Anyway, when you pass a certain threshold, the game director needs to be told, "Hey, stop sending hordes at these guys. They're dealing with the event. We don't want to, make this game too hard. We're going to turn the hordes off while they're in the event." Knowing where pacing turns off can also be extremely beneficial. So in this case, for Righteous Stand, the second you take a single step through this doorway or that doorway into this area, pacing turns off. So you can see in the top left, it now says the second to last line, no horde will spawn during this state. That means we've walked through and we've hit this invisible trigger point for turning off horde pacing. Why can that be useful? A very common hold point for teams in Righteous Stand is right here. You're fighting a horde, one person dies, maybe even two people die. And they're not going to respawn close by. They respawn all the way over here in the event. Two people alone in Deathwish Onslaught, man, that is super hard to survive. It can be done, but it's extremely hard. It'd be easier if you didn't have to fight hordes while you're trying to go get your teammates. So instead of two people are dead, you've cleared a horde, you come over here, man, there's some ambience and stuff. Man, we should kill these ambience before we try and go get our teammates. What you can instead do, pull their aggro, make them climb up after you, and just ignore them. Drop down here, rush over to this spot, and just touch right here. And now all of a sudden, the chances of survival for those two people has skyrocketed. Because you know that if I step here, pacing for hordes will stop, you can make the decision to rush over here when there's only two people alive and turn off hordes. And now it is so much easier, not guaranteed again, but so much easier for two people to try and get the rescue on their teammates in the event when there's no hordes to fight than if they're just fighting in here trying to kill ambience, a horde comes and there's still specials coming at them. Just by taking this initial step, because you came in here and you watched the stream and you said, man, Pestilence is a smart guy, pacing turns off here. With that knowledge, you can turn off the pacing, and now you can try and complete the map, get your teammates up, and continue on. There are a couple different maps where knowing where pacing turns off can be extremely helpful and important, but this is the one that I run into most often because the hold spot and a common space to fight monsters is right there. If stuff goes wrong, it just takes one person touching there to make survival a lot higher chance. It's also nice if you have like a handmaiden or a shade or a ranger veteran, somebody with invisibility that can kind of just run in, do it, and run back out. Because once it's off until the event is done. you won't get hordes again until the event is completed. So you don't even have to stay in that area. You just have to touch it and come back out, and you could rejoin your team, clear out the ambience, and help them with specials until you've been able to slowly work your way forward and rescue that teammate. Did I cover everything with pacing?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yep. And I guess just because this is another good example, pacing for Righteous Stand does not start until you've dropped down, and you can even touch the haystack here. Map progression is down there. I'm fairly certain pacing is still not active until you drop down here. But by any case, you wouldn't normally want to be on the haystack. Pacing's not on while you're up here. So any enemies that you see here, you can pull and kill, and then your run to the first hold spot is that much clearer. And you could even take it a step further and jump up here. And now you have sightline down this entire path. Normally the first hold spot for Righteous Stand is right here. So you have this big long path that's usually full of enemies that you have to fight through to get to your first hold spot. And a lot of times you'll be fighting, and by the time you get to this point, a horde will spawn in. And man, there's so many ambience here, plus the horde already spawned in. We got to fight right here instead. And then gas or something just kills us, or we get overwhelmed by horde plus these ambience being pulled. A lot of the times you can avoid that situation by, before pacing is even turned on, you come over here, you have sightline of this entire area, you pull everything that you can see, and get it to come over to you, kill it when it climbs here, and it was just free enemies that are cleared from your path. Now you can get to your first hold spot much quicker and much safer without having to fight hordes and specials at the same time. I also just realized that this is a really good example. I should have come here instead of Screaming Bell. Going back to patrols. What is this thing right here? This is a patrol trigger. Sometimes when you start Righteous Stand, you can trigger a patrol before you've actually turned on pacing. There's 2 spots for it, actually. Here and here. It can be extremely beneficial to trigger this patrol and then pull it on purpose. Because how much easier is it to fight a patrol when there's no specials and no hordes that you have to worry about? It's just you and the patrol. There's not even ambience around you. You're still at the start of the map. So a lot of the times you'll see teams, if they jump into Righteous Stand and they hear a patrol spawn before they've even started pacing, you just wait for it to march to where you can see it and you pull it on purpose. You come over here, you have a climb that they have to do, so you're doing extra damage to them while they climb after you, and it's free damage because they can't fight back. And you just clear out that patrol before the map has even started. And then this entire area before the first event is the first trigger area. You don't have to worry about a trigger at any point now in this first area of Righteous Stand. You just cleared that patrol before the game even started. It was free at that point. And this whole area is so much easier to clear when you're not testing for monster triggers and testing for patrol triggers and risking pulling a patrol or fighting a monster in a rough spot. A common one is right here. When you climb up the ladder, you can have a boss just spawn in your face right here. Whole area is so much easier when you just don't have to worry about that. You've cleared out your patrol right at the start. This is a really good example of how pacing can be really important to know about and really take advantage of it, because not only can you clear your path to that first hold spot and make getting there much easier, occasionally you can even just clear the first trigger basically for free because you don't have to worry about specials and hordes at the same time. Thank you for bringing that up. It was a good thing to talk about. Any questions about pacing, pulling patrols on purpose, anything like that? No. Okay. I think that's it for me then.
I can't see anything in the chat right now. But actually, that call with the patrol pulling right in the beginning is something we have
Yeah.
never done, and it's very smart. We should maybe do that. That's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
very smart. I didn't know that. That's, yeah, obviously, just pull the patrol and just get it
pull the
done with.
patrol.
We always
Yeah,
jump
'cause-
down and then pull it by accident, and then we're just
Yes,
stuck in the
exactly.
ring.
You always end up coming down here
Yeah.
and you accidentally pull it. And I'll touch on this. It's only tangentially related, but I'll touch on it because we're here. People are very often scared of patrols and they focus on not pulling the patrols, which is great. Obviously, you don't want to pull the patrol if you don't have to. But sometimes people focus too hard on not pulling the patrol. And what ends up happening is they pull it on accident. And so you're presented with two situations. You can pull the patrol on your own terms, fight it in a position and time that you want to fight it, or you can accidentally pull the patrol. Now you have the patrol plus a horde plus specials, and you're not in the spot that you want to fight it, right? One of those two situations is better than the other. So obviously not pulling the patrol is the best situation, but a lot of the times the right answer is to pull the patrol on purpose, just when you're ready for it.
Yeah, you
And this
just
is
straight up prevent any missteps to happen in the first place, right?
exactly. Yep. You're guaranteeing fighting the patrol, which isn't great, but you're eliminating the chance of mistakes causing a wipe. I'm much more comfortable fighting a patrol on my own terms than I am risking accidentally pulling it in a lot of situations. Obviously, not all situations. You know, there's some patrols that are super easy to dodge and you don't worry about it. But there are patrols in this game that, man, we're cutting it close every time we try and run past them. And maybe, 40% of the time we actually end up pulling it and dying to it. Well, maybe you should think about pulling that patrol on purpose, use your resources, and then you just don't have to worry about it. They're enemies that you can kill just like any other enemies in the game. And so it can be very beneficial to pull the patrols on purpose. This is a very obvious example. You pull this patrol, there's no specials, there's no horde, it's a free trigger. But not just this example. There's patrols in the middle of maps that really it's beneficial to pull them on purpose.
Very, very good sight there
Mhm.
on the patrol pulling as well. We have another
Mhm.
question in the chat about specials. Asking,
Yes.
are there any triggers that spawn guaranteed specials?
Yes, there are. So for sure in Deathwish Onslaught, the middle event at the barn. Is this just Onslaught Plus? I'm just having trouble remembering. I know at the barn middle event for for Against the Grain. I apologize. Against the Grain middle event, the barn. When you spawn the monsters, it spawns 2 hook rats at the same time. Is that just Onslaught Plus, or is that also in normal Dwans?
I'm not sure right now, but it's definitely
Yeah.
in plus.
Yeah, so that's
I
at
think
least one example of a guaranteed spawn of specials is the barn middle event in green. And I'm sure there's more that people can type in the chat that I'm not thinking of.
Yeah.
So I guess to answer the question, yes, they exist. It's rare, but it does exist where when you pass a certain point, specials are forced in.
All right. Something else also mentioned was if there are any resources for it. I could probably also show that real quick.
Yeah, so I know Cooley has an entire YouTube playlist going through all of the maps. I don't know if he's game maps, showing trigger locations, respawn locations, etc. So that's a good resource. If you go to Cooley's YouTube, he's got a playlist for it, just going through everything. If you don't, what he does is he just goes through the map like I am with level debug on. But if you don't want to start up Vermintide, you just want a quick reference to be able to jump to a spot in the video. Those are very helpful for that. So definitely a good resource is Cooley's videos. I wrote guides in Steam for 3 maps going over respawn checkpoints, common spots to get the map progression in your favor for respawns and where to stand to get specific respawns. I have 3 Steam guides that I wrote. It was Against the Grain, War Camp, and I don't remember the other map I did. I have not done it for any of the other maps. It took a lot of time, and having a baby takes time away from your ability to write those guides. So I think it'll probably just be those 3, but if you're curious for those 3 maps, I do have Steam guides for those as well. And I'm sure other people have also made YouTube videos and Steam guides as well for these mechanics that other people might be able to tell you about.
Yeah. Another one I would also quickly add to that is the patrol one from Cooley, also a Steam guide,
Yes.
which is also incredibly valuable because it shows all the different patrol paths from all the different maps in a top-down view, so you can check real quick if they are looping, if they are despawning, where their paths are exactly, and you can do that outside of the game without having to boot up level debug or fiddle around with any mods.
Yeah,
very
and
helpful.
again, just because I thought about it, I should have just come to Righteous Stand. There's so many good examples here. Someone was asking earlier, how do you know if a patrol despawns? And I had that example of the patrol that most of the time patrols despawn out of bounds where you can't see it. And this hold spot for Righteous Stand, you can see this patrol path, this dark blue, it just ends right here. You can watch this patrol despawn. If you trigger this patrol and your team is holding, this is a very common hold spot. If you're very confident that you won't pull it, you can have the team just stand right here in the corner and it'll just despawn in your face. So it's very funny when that happens.
I always pull that one by accident.
Yes. I mean, you don't want to if you don't have to stand right here. Usually you're fighting a horde and you're like, oh crap, a patrol spawned. Oh crap, we need to get away from it. And you can't because there's a horde in front of you. You can back up here and it'll just disappear. Obviously, if you don't have to, you can just walk forward over here and it won't come over there and you're fine. But it can be good to, I don't think it was in a tournament, but I've been playing with people where it's like, with my knowledge that this patrol despawns, everybody was freaking out. I told them, hey, we just back up here as a team, hold block, it'll handle itself. And it did, and we were able to continue on with the map with a patrol that we weren't quite ready for, just because I knew that it would despawn there. So just another good example of how the knowledge of these locations and mechanics can really be the difference between losing and winning games.
We have one more question in the chat.
Mhm.
Does this mod show when several bosses will be spawned? Like when you drop down in the sewers in Convocation of Decay?
I don't think so. So, somebody else might tell me I'm wrong, but I believe this is only going to show like the triggers that Fat Shark put into the map, and those sorts of triggers I don't think will be represented.
Yeah.
But I've never actually looked myself. I don't know for sure, but I would doubt it.
No, I believe you're right. Because the 3 triggers count as an event that has been adjusted and manually put into place. It's essentially an event in itself, so the 3 bosses don't count as separate objects, as separate bosses for the game, but as like one event that happens, similar to the Righteous Stand event that is also a boss in the middle event, but it doesn't show like there's a boss trigger in the middle event because it's not a trigger, but an event which also has one of those enemy types.
Yeah. Another funny thing that can happen with Righteous Stand. I keep going up. Where's the elevator stop? Here. For those that don't know, you can leave the Righteous Stand middle event without killing everything. It will just follow you up. You just have to wait for that gate to drop, right? And something that can happen every once in a while is you finish the event, but the monster is still alive, but some teammates died, so you have to take the elevator up to rescue your teammates. And you come up here, and then a monster jumps through the window, and you have to fight a monster in this small space. What can also happen Boss triggers. There is a boss trigger right here and right here. And you're like, well, if I'm fighting a boss in this room, I'm never going to walk forward and pull ambience and hit this trigger and spawn another boss, right? In this corner, your map progression jumps past the door when you step right here. So I have had it before where we were forced to come up this elevator early. The event monster was still alive. We resurrected our team, and just in fighting the monster and the leftover event enemies, someone walked over here, and we got very unlucky, and the game had decided that a boss was here, and we triggered that boss, and now we had 2 bosses that we had to fight, the event boss and the normal map trigger boss. So just a funny example of things that can happen. You can fight 2 bosses here on accident.
Great. Then thanks a lot. So that was a good example where you can be very cautious also about these progression jumps, because they can be scary and very helpful at the same time. You just gotta know where they are, really.
Where they are, yep.
And in the end, it just needs one person in the team to just do some research and figure some things out and tell their teammates what is going on, because as long as one person knows, the team will be probably having a lot easier time proceeding through the map.
Yep.
All right. Are there any more questions in the chat or in the voice chat right here? Otherwise, I'd say I think we covered pretty much all topics, including even more. Thanks a lot for the for the quick summary of how pacing works, and another example of how patrol triggering and patrol pulling on intentionally works, and how that can be beneficial as well. Very interesting stuff. So thanks a lot for that. I do not see any more questions right here. Yeah, sounds to me like we can check out what is up to come, because this is not the last stream right here. When does the arena event trigger end? Okay, we can cover that probably real quick still. You want to talk about that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
There was another question in the chat.
Oh, sure.
Asking about the arena event trigger. When does it end?
For this one in particular, for Righteous Stand, this arena, it turns pacing back on and the event is considered done when the second gate has dropped. And so you'll notice if you're doing this event and you're fighting and you hear a horde spawn, but you're still fighting enemies, the boss of the event is still alive, there's still enemies around, it's because you took too long killing stuff, which is common, it happens. But the gate has dropped and the game considers the event over at that point. And so horde pacing turns back on when the second gate has dropped fully. And that's also the reason why you can continue on with the map by taking the elevator up when there are still event enemies alive, including potentially the monster, is because the event isn't tied to what's alive. The event is tied to this gate dropping. Other events will work differently, but that's Righteous Stand in particular.
Bless you. Yeah, I think that covers the question, and that probably also covers this entire section here. So let's check out what is up to come, because this, again, as I just mentioned, is not the last stream we have. We have another one coming up on Tuesday, next week Tuesday, which will be hosted by Slash. Mr. Slash Cax will be showing you a couple tricks and a couple philosophies when you're thinking about how to backline in a team composition in the Death Wish Onslaught modded difficulties. He will be talking a little bit about how your mentality is when you backline, and what the tricks and small ideas are that you can keep in mind there. Yes, we will also have another one coming up next week, and then with this captain's event finishing up on Saturday and Sunday, the 12th and 13th, we will have the 2 event streams coming up. So that today marks also halfway through the captain's event. So for all players out there, we are halfway through. just a quick heads up for that. Time is running fast. So, with many questions answered, a quick look at respawn mechanics, trigger mechanics, and the pacing mechanics as well, we will finish up the stream now. I thank you all very much for your questions, for your participation, and also huge shout out for Pestilence for making sure that this insane preparation with the 2 videos is ready, and you can enjoy the these explanations and can go into the maps and see how exactly everything works and how you can proceed through the map a bit safer and a bit more planned next time.
Thank you for helping put on this event. Janoti, you're putting a lot of work into this, so
thanks a lot.
Thanks for letting me talk and try and spill out my knowledge to everybody as well. If you enjoyed the videos, I just threw them up on YouTube. You can go watch them by themselves as well. Put a lot of time into making them, so hopefully you enjoyed them. But yeah, thanks to everybody for sitting here listening to me talk for an hour and a half.
It was awesome. Thanks a lot. Well, that means we are at the end of the stream. I will see you, or Slashcax will see you on Tuesday and talk with you a bit about backline. Until then, until next time.